Hello everyone, welcome to Decades, a history channel fueled by a love for it mixed with self-loathing, and of course, the cult of personality of Connor Jones. And today we're back with more absurd random history facts. We've done 4 of these videos in the past, they seem to have been received well, so we're going to do a 5th, because as we know, nothing is more satisfying than observing 25 random bits of trivia from throughout the ages in a YouTube video. So you know the drill, history's a bit of a wacky story. For as long as humanity's been able to put pen to paper, quill to papyrus, and rock to rock, there have been peculiar occurrences, amusing events, wowing moments and accomplishments, and people dying in incredibly embarrassing ways. So as you can imagine, that makes the criteria for this series incredibly vague. But nonetheless, please enjoy 25 absurd random history facts, Part 5. The chief baker aboard the Titanic was a fellow named Charles Joffin, who only survived the vessel's infamous sinking in 1912 due to an obscene amount of alcohol in his system. This allowed his body to resist the cold, icy waters of the North Atlantic, where in an inebriated state he paddled around until he was picked up by a lifeboat. In fact, he claimed he could hardly feel the cold. In fact, according to his and other survivors' testimonies, when the Titanic broke in half and went vertical before sinking, Joffin was at the topmost part of the ship, where he, for lack of a better term, rode it down, making him the last survivor to leave the doomed vessel. But before we go in properly labelling him as a drunken idiot who happened to survive, thanks to the sweet nectar of alcohol and a complete unawareness of his surroundings, he was 100% aware of his surroundings, and despite absolutely getting drunk in the process, was actively involved in the act of saving as many lives as possible. Joffin would live until 1956, when he passed away, aged 78 years. On the 14th of October, 1912, former US President Theodore Roosevelt was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, campaigning for the presidency when a man named John Schrank shot him in the chest with a .38 caliber revolver. The bullet lodged in his chest after passing through his 50-page speech document. Rather than seek immediate medical attention, Roosevelt concluded that due to not coughing up blood, his lung had not been penetrated, and therefore continued to deliver his speech. Doctors would later decide the bullet was far safer left in his chest, thus he kept it in his body for the rest of his life. That man sounds hard as nails. Moving on, beard taxes are historical, governmental and royal policies that mandated men who desired the privilege of donning a beard must pay for such a luxury. This was famously enacted by Tsar Peter I, otherwise known as Peter the Great, of Russia in the late 17th century, even going as far as empowering authorities to forcibly shave those who refused to pay the tax, and remained in effect until 1772. Legend has it King Henry VIII of England also enacted such a tax on bearded fellows, however this claim lacks contemporary evidence. Look, as long as HMRC don't get any ideas, I'm happy. So let's shift onwards. When co-founder of the German supermarket chain Aldi, Theodore Albrecht, was abducted in 1971, the demanded ransom was 7 million German marks. The money was paid and only half would be recovered upon the apprehension of his kidnappers. Albrecht would unsuccessfully attempt to claim the ransom as a tax-deductible business expense. In 1969, the New York Times compiled an article of influential figures from around the world reacting to the Apollo 11 manned moon landing, undoubtedly standing to be one of the greatest human accomplishments ever undertaken. One of the influential figures asked about this event was Spanish artist Pablo Picasso, who simply stated, "It means nothing to me. I have no opinion about it, and I don't care." As for our 6th fact of the day, Michel Latio was a French entertainer known for his ability to consume indigestible objects. His feats included consuming bicycles, shopping trolleys, televisions, and of course, who could forget, a Cessna 150 light aircraft, which he consumed between the years of 1978 and 1980. He was awarded a brass plaque from the Guinness Book of Records for having the strangest diet, and of course, he ate that too. In 1738, a group of Bavarian Roman Catholics founded a paramasonic society named the Order of the Pug, in which novices would be initiated while wearing a dog collar and scratching on a door to be admitted. Then the pugs of the order would bark loudly to trial the sturdiness of newcomers. Initiates also had to kiss a porcelain pug's rear department to express devotion to the order. There have been reports that this order was active in Lyon, France as late as 1902. Look, I'm a dog lover, but that's just a tad extreme. Anyway, It's fun Hitler fact time. Did you know that Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Benito Mussolini have all been nominated for Nobel Peace Prizes? Hitler's nomination in 1939 was something of a joke. However, I don't suspect the world was ready to see the funny side. As our 9th fact of the day, 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln's son Robert Lincoln, was either present at or nearby to 3 presidential assassinations. His father's occurred at Ford's Theatre while he was at the White House, only 1 mile away on the 15th of April 1865. He witnessed the assassination of 20th President James Garfield at the 6th Street train station in Washington, D.C. on the 2nd of July 1881, and was at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, at the time when 25th President William McKinley was shot dead in 1901. Following this, Lincoln would refuse later presidential invitations, acknowledging this dark coincidence by citing there's a certain fatality to presidential functions whenever he's present. For our 10th bit of trivia, the Wicked Bible was an edition of the Bible published in 1631 that, by error, omitted the word not from the commandment, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." So it read rather controversially, "Thou shalt commit adultery." Today, there are 15 known copies still in existence, of which 7 are in the UK, 6 are in the United States, 1 is in Canada, and another is in New Zealand. Bridget Driscoll was the name of the first pedestrian to be killed when she was hit by a motor car on the 17th of August 1896 at Crystal Palace, London, England. Witnesses described the car as being driven at reckless speeds. It was travelling at 4 miles per hour. During the hearing, at which the jury returned the verdict of accidental death, the coroner, named Percy Morrison, stated he hoped such an accident would never occur again. As far as jinx statements go, that must have been an instant classic. In 1970, a man named Dave Kunst from Minnesota embarked on a mission to circumnavigate the globe on foot, barring of course the portions of the Earth that lack land. His journey took 4 years, and Dave's travel partner was his brother, John, who would be killed by bandits in Afghanistan's leg of the journey in 1972. Dave himself would be shot in this encounter, but after recovering would continue from the spot his brother was killed, along with another brother of his named Peter. He would also meet his wife-to-be on this mega mooch in Australia. Eventually, Dave returned home having completed his objective in 1974. Apparently, early 18th century pirate Benjamin Hornigold once raided a vessel off the coast of Honduras purely to steal the crew's hats after his crew had gotten drunk and thrown theirs overboard. In 1974, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, also known as North Korea, ordered 1,000 cars from Swedish auto manufacturer Volvo, among other things from Sweden, and never paid for the goods. It is estimated that North Korea owes Sweden hundreds of millions of euros today, since Volvo was paid with public funds. Why Volvo specifically? I mean, they are built like tanks, so it's not terribly tricky to fathom. However, it should be noted this came at a time when North Korea was on something of an importing spree. That doesn't stop this event from being remembered as the largest car theft in history. The horrible word soccer was actually coined in England during the 19th century as a shortening to association football to distinguish the sport from rugby football that was known at the time as rugger, which for the record is also a disgusting word in its own right. The reason these names didn't stick is, I'd imagine, because they don't really roll off the tongue. Jokes aside, they did stick for quite some time, and the reason Brits eventually disowned the nasty word altogether is chiefly because the word football sounded less American, and the word was only ever born out of some Oxford University wet dream to inject pretentiousness into everything to begin with, and though often used interchangeably before it was ditched, was always eclipsed by simply calling the sport football. Americans still use the forbidden word because, of course, they have American football, which isn't as poorly named as it sounds because football is a broad term that encompasses a variety of open play ball games played on foot and doesn't necessarily refer to the act of kicking a ball, and also because it reliably gets a rise out of an Englishman. This is a great example for highlighting the innate human ability to viciously argue about nothing worthwhile. But word to the wise, if you say the word soccer around me, I will get violent. On the topic of unfairly judged Americanisms, the United Kingdom also formatted dates as month, day, year prior to the 20th century, however they didn't render it numerically, rather spelled out the name of the month. But if you're going to spell it out numerically in reverse, I must ask, why not put the year first? Is it because the year is often omitted from reference altogether? I'm curious as to how this difference in date formatting emerged. Nonetheless, it's time to move on. The Space Pen is a pen that utilises pressurised ink cartridges for the purpose of usage in zero gravity, among other difficult to write environments. NASA would invest in the development of the Space Pen, however the project was abandoned when costs skyrocketed and NASA reverted to the use of pencils to write stuff down in space. That said, a project to complete the Space Pen would be funded privately by Fisher Space Pen Company. Mad. What would you use a space pen for if you were in space? I would draw a massive phallus. Think about it, all of that money pulled into creating the most expensive piece of juvenile graffiti. For our 18th fact of the day, London wasn't always actually the capital of England. When England was first unified in 927, its capital was Winchester. Winchester would retain its status until the Norman invasion of 1066. With the establishment of the Palace of Westminster into the 12th and 13th centuries, London's capital status would be cemented as a permanent location of the royal court. So, number 19. It is believed the last place on Earth to support the existence of woolly mammoths prior to the extinction was Wrangel Island in Russia, where an isolated population was believed to have survived until around 2000 BC. This means the mammoths would have been around for the construction of the pyramids and Stonehenge, though I doubt they were known for holidaying, so they likely wouldn't have seen such feats of engineering. But it's a cool thought, however it may not mean as much as it first seems. The deepest human-made hole on Earth is the Kola Super Deep Borehole in Russia. Its vertical depth reached over 12 kilometers in 1989, surpassing the depth of the Mariana Trench as a result of a scientific effort to drill as deep into the Earth as possible, ceasing because temperatures at the bottom of the hole reached 180 degrees Celsius and a list a mile long of other technical difficulties. To shift onward, the first photograph depicting a person was captured somewhat accidentally. The image depicts a deserted street in Paris that only appears that way because the exposure took several minutes, rendering any moving objects such as people, carts and so on to simply not show. However, a man getting his shoes shined in the bottom left corner of the picture remained still enough throughout this time frame for his human visage to remain visible. This photograph was taken at some time between 1837 and 1838 by famous early photographer Louis Daguerre, and is known as the Boulevard du Temple. In the production of the original 1977 Star Wars, often referred to now as A New Hope, Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan Kenobi lightsaber prop was made partially from a decommissioned World War I era No. 3 Mark I British rifle grenade. Considering its undoubtedly hard life on set, it's a good job the decommissioning process was evidently thorough. Or was it? The Champavat tiger was a man-eating Bengal tigress that allegedly killed and ate approximately 200 men and women in Nepal, before heading to Champavat district of North India, continuing to kill humans, bringing her total kill count to a number estimated to be well in excess of 400 people in the opening years of the 20th century. She would be tracked down and killed in 1907. Though tigers tend to be wary of humans and don't tend to take a shine into human meat in general, there have been instances in which tigers, among other big cat species, have sought out humans for the purpose of consumption. So the next time your cat looks at you funny, yes, it could be thinking about ending your life. But you already knew that, didn't you? For our 24th fact of the day, the single Rumble by Link Wray was banned in various US radio markets in the 1950s because it was worried the instrumental, that is rather tame, at least for today's standards, would somehow incite gang violence and promote juvenile delinquency, making it the only instrumental to be banned from radio in the United States. And finally, Karl Marx had 3 daughters who survived into adulthood, all of whom shared the first name Jenny, which was also his wife's name. I get naming one child after a parent, but wouldn't 3 get confusing even if 2 of them adopt middle names? To any parents watching, specifically dads, how much would that hurt your head? And that brings us nicely to the end of the video, where you can see my hairline receding in real time. Thank you all for watching. I really hope that you've enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share this channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff, and maybe check out a few of the other videos. We don't just do these list type things. In fact, mostly we like to get out on location, get some cool footage, and compile some content. I don't know how else to advertise it. Hopefully, we'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point. But until next time, please take care. And goodbye.